Glad you could join us this evening. Tonight, we're continuing our journey through the book that Max Lucado wrote called They Walked with God. And we're focusing on Moses. And of course, Moses, a well known character. Every Easter, a lot of us watch the Ten Commandments. We know a lot about Moses, probably through that movie more than anything else. But let's dive a little bit deeper into Moses. We're going to be in Exodus 3, verses 1 through 6, and then 9 through 10. Moses was tending the flock of Jericho, his father in law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And there the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. So Moses thought, I'll go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up. And when the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, Here I am. Do not come any closer, God said. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. And then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. God said, And now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now go, I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. So that's part of what we, of course, know well about Moses, his first visit with God himself. This is what Max has to say. The hallway is silent except for the wheels of the mop bucket and the shuffle of the old man's feet. Both sound tired. Both know these floors. How many nights has Hank cleaned them? Always careful to get in the corners, always careful to set up his yellow caution sign, warning of wet floors, always chuckling as he does. Be careful, everyone, he laughs to himself, knowing no one is near, not at 3 a.m. Hank's health isn't what it used to be. Gout keeps him awake. Arthritis makes him limp. His glasses are so thick his eyeballs look twice their size. His shoulders stoop, but he does his work, slopping soapy water on linoleum, scrubbing the heel marks left by the well-heeled lawyers. He'll be finished an hour before quitting time, always finishes early. He has for 20 years. And when finished, he'll put away his bucket, take a seat outside the office of the senior partner, and wait. Never leaves early. Could. No one would know, but he doesn't. He broke the rules once, but never again. Sometimes if the door is open, he'll enter the office, not for long, just to look. The suite is larger than his apartment. He once had such an office, back when Hank was Harry, back when the custodian was an executive, long ago, before the night shift, before the mop bucket, before the maintenance uniform, before the scandal. Hank doesn't think about it much anymore. He got in trouble, he got fired, he got out. That's it. Not many people know about it. It's his secret. Hank's story, by the way, is true. I changed the name and a detail or two. I gave him a different job and put him in a different century, but the story is factual. You've heard it, you know it, and when I give you his real name, you'll remember. But more than a true story, it's a common story. It's a story of a derailed dream. It's a story of high hopes colliding with harsh realities. It happens to all dreamers, and since all have dreamed, that means it's happened to us all. In Hank's case, it was a mistake he could never forget, a grave mistake. Hank had killed someone. He came upon a criminal beating up on an innocent man, and Hank lost control. He killed the mugger, and when word got out, Hank got out. Hank would rather hide than go to jail. The executive became a fugitive. True story, common story. Now, most stories aren't as extreme as Hank's. Few spend their lives running from the law. Many, however, live with regrets. I could have gone to college on a golf scholarship. A fellow told me on the golf course, had an offer right out of school, but I joined a rock and roll band and ended up never going. Now I'm fixing garage doors. Now I'm stuck. It's an epitaph of a derailed dream. If you picked up a high school yearbook and read the "what I want to do" sentence under each picture, you'll get dizzy breathing the thin air of mountaintop visions. Yet take the yearbook to a 20th year reunion and read the next chapter. Oh, yeah, some dreams came true, but many don't. Not that all should, mind you. I hope the little guy who dreamed of being a sumo wrestler came to his senses. And I hope he didn't lose his passion in the process. Changing direction in life is not tragic, but losing your passion in life is. Something happens to us along the way, convictions to change the world, downgrade to commitments to just make sure we pay the bills. Rather than make a difference, we make a salary. Rather than look forward, we look back. Rather than look outward, we look inward and we don't like what we see. Hank didn't. Hank saw a man who had settled for the mediocre, trained in the finest institutions of the world, yet working the night shift in a minimum wage job so he wouldn't have been seen in the day. But all that changed when he heard the voice from the mop bucket. At first, he thought the voice was a joke. Some of the fellows on the third floor had played these kind of tricks before. Henry, the voice called, and Hank turned. No one called him Henry anymore. Henry. He turned toward the pail. It was glowing, bright red, hot red. How could he could even feel the heat 10 feet away? He stepped closer and looked in. Well, the water wasn't boiling. This is strange, Hank mumbled to himself as he took another step to get a closer look, but the voice stopped him. Don't come any closer. Take off your shoes. You are on holy tile. And suddenly, Hank knew who was speaking. God. I'm not making this up. I know you think I am. It sounds crazy, almost impossible. God speaking from a hot mop bucket to a janitor named Hank. Would it be believable if I said that God was speaking from a burning bush to a shepherd named Moses? Well, yeah, that one's easier to handle because, well, we've heard it before. But just because it's Moses and a bush rather than Hank and a bucket, it's no less spectacular. It sure shocked the sandals off Moses. We wonder what amazed the old fellow more, that God spoke in a bush or that God spoke at all. You see, Moses, like Hank, had made a mistake. You remember his story. He was adopted nobility, an Israelite, reared in an Egyptian palace. His countrymen were slaves, but Moses was privileged. He ate at the royal table. He was educated in the finest schools. But his most influential teacher had no degree. She was his mother, someone who was hired to be his nanny. Moses, you can almost hear her whisper to her young son, God has put you here on purpose. Someday you will set your people free. Never forget, Moses. Never forget. And Moses didn't. The flame of justice grew hotter until it blazed. Moses saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave. And just like Hank killing the mugger, Moses killed the Egyptian. The next day, Moses saw the Hebrew. You'd think the slave would say thanks. He didn't. Rather than express gratitude, he expressed anger. Will you kill me too? He asked. And Moses knew he was in trouble. He fled Egypt. He hid in the wilderness. Call it a career shift. He went from dining with heads of state to counting heads of sheep. And so it happened that a bright, promising Hebrew began herding sheep in the hills. And Moses thought the move was permanent. There was no indication he would have ever intended to go back to Egypt. In fact, there is every indication he wanted to stay with his sheep. Standing barefoot before the bush, he confessed, I am not a great man. How can I go to the king and lead the Israelites out of Egypt? I'm pretty glad Moses asked that question. It's a good one. Why Moses? Or more specifically, why 80-year-old Moses? The 40-year-old version was more appealing. The Moses we saw in Egypt was brash and confident, but the Moses we find 4 decades later is reluctant, is weather beaten. Had you or I looked at Moses back in Egypt, we would have said, this man is ready for battle, educated in the finest system in the world, trained by the ablest soldiers, instant access to the inner circle of the Pharaoh. Moses spoke their language and knew their habits. He was the perfect man for the job. Moses at 40 we like, but Moses at 80, no way. Too old, too tired. He's a shepherd. What impact would he have on Pharaoh? He's the wrong man for the job. Oh, and Moses agreed. Tried that once before, he would say. Those people don't want to be helped. Just leave me here to tend my sheep. They're easier to lead. Moses wouldn't have gone, and we wouldn't have sent him. But God did. How do you figure? Benched at 40 and suited up at 80. Why? What does he know now that he didn't know then? What did he learn in the deserts that he didn't learn in Egypt? Well, the ways of the desert, for one. 40-year-old Moses was a city boy. Moses, later in life, knows the name of every snake and the location of every watering hole. If he's going to lead thousands of Hebrews into the wilderness, he better know the basics of the wilderness. Family dynamics, for another. If he's going to be traveling with families for 40 years, it might help to understand how they work. He had married a woman of faith, the daughter of a priest, and establishes his own family. But more than the ways of the desert and the people, Moses needed to learn something about himself. Apparently, he had learned it. God says Moses is ready, and to convince him, God speaks through a bush. School's out, God tells him. Now it's time for you to get out and get to work. But Moses, he was ready to go, and guess what? So are we. The voice from the bush is the voice that whispers to us. It reminds us that God is not finished with us yet. Oh, you may think he is. You may think you've peaked. You may think he's got someone else to do the job. But if that's the way you're thinking, think again. God began doing a good work in you, and I'm sure he will continue it until it is finished when Jesus Christ comes again. It says in Philippians 1, verse 6. He may speak through a burning bush, a mop bucket, a stranger, but he will continue to speak to you. I always like what Max Lucado, when he takes something from the Bible and kind of turns it into something more of our day. And of course, the story of Hank was really always the story of Moses. And that's what's so good about Max Lucado's book, is how he ties that in. And so some of the questions that he leaves us with tonight that I want you to think about is, have your convictions changed as you've grown older? And if so, in what way? And have your evolving convictions brought you closer to understanding who God is? Would you have given Moses the job of bringing Israel out of slavery? And what do you think God saw in Moses? And what do you think God sees in you? And what do you think God may be still calling you to do? That's probably one of the most important questions to ponder. And then read Philippians chapter 1, verse 6, and maybe see what that the verse says, God began doing a good work in you, and I'm sure he will continue it until it is finished when Jesus Christ comes again. It's a very, very good verse. So this is the story of Moses this week, and hopefully you'll continue to read more about Moses in the Bible. You'll continue to think about what Moses was asked to do and what we're asked to do each and every day in service to God. Our Bible study next Wednesday, of course, 9 o'clock in the morning in person in Paxton, Mountain Time, at the United Methodist Church there. And then next Wednesday night, right here, same time, same place, on our Parish website, 7 o'clock Central Time, 6 o'clock Mountain Time. And next week, we're going to talk about Nicodemus. So you can read John 3, verses 1 through 21. John 3, verses 1 through 21, as we continue our journey with Max Lucado and some of the people in the Bible that we've been focusing on here for quite a while. So I hope you enjoyed our Bible study this evening. Again, we'll continue on through the month of May, and we'll have our in-person Bible studies, which you're welcome to come and join us, 9 o'clock Mountain Time in Paxton at the Methodist Church, or every Wednesday night right here, or whenever you get a chance to catch up with us on our hspparish.com website, and we'll have these Bible studies continuing. So let us finish with a prayer this evening. Loving and gracious God, sometimes we feel, God, that there's nothing else we can do for you, that we have served you and we have moved on, but you're never done with us, and we should never ever think that we are done serving you. There are so many things we can do, continually do, whether it's even just share a smile with someone or give them hope, tell them the story of how our relationship with Jesus Christ has changed our lives and what it can do for them. I mean, there are so many things that we can continue to do to serve you. We just ask, God, that you guide us and you just help us to those who need the help the most, that those who need hope in the world of darkness today. We ask all of this in Jesus Christ's name. Amen.